Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Kicking It with Cal. I'm your host, Cal Denicky. It's been a while since we've been on the podcast, but we're going to talk some NBA today. We got David Bracey. We got Brad Hardin here. Guys, how you doing today?
Living the dream. Glad to be back in the saddle, talking about some hoops. We're past the midway point, so there's a lot to chat about. So let's just dive into it. Brad, how about you? How you living over there?
I've been to a couple NBA games this year, and the product is good, so it's probably going to be good. So I'm pretty excited to kind of share some of those thoughts and, obviously get to hang out with the boys as always.
Yep. So we're past the midway point. Like David said, we got NFL playoffs are over with. Baseball hasn't started up yet. March Madness is on the horizon. So why not catch up with some NBA and get people going for anyone who maybe hasn't been paying attention a ton or has been and wants to hear our thoughts. So we'll start from the start of the season until now. And I want to ask you guys what your biggest storyline of the year has been so far. So David, I'll start with you. What would you say in totality has been the biggest storyline of this 2023-2024 NBA season?
Well, like we've often touched on, we're past the midway point, so storylines are kind of like ironing themselves out, if you will. But a more emerging one that I think is probably going to be the strongest one when the season closes out is injuries, which is kind of crazy that it seems like that's been a consistent theme over the past several years. When it comes to the NBA and the NBA itself, it's an organization that's kind of tried to address that problem with certain incentives and certain, versions of reprimanding, if you will. Most recently this season in the form of, a 65-game limit in order to make all NBA, all defensive teams, some of these key postseason accolades that really trigger a lot of financial incentives for these guys. So they're feeling it not only, in their body because there's injuries, but in their pocket because they're not going to get that cash. Embiid, I think, is the biggest example of this. I mean, this guy's coming off of his MVP. He finally reaches the mountaintop, theoretically. He has been playing out of control to open up the season, got a new coach. Tyrese Maxey's looking like the perfect teammate for him. And now I'm wondering if we're going to see this guy again at all. Donovan Mitchell, just as recently as last week, became ineligible for awards like All-NBA. And I think, to say the least, he's having definitely an All-NBA season. I think he's considerably within the top 15 players in the NBA for this season. So it really shakes things up. It offers some opportunity to guys who otherwise probably wouldn't have got it. But in another way, it kind of knocks a couple guys off of their pedestal. So we'll see how they respond and if the league makes any adjustments going forward.
And watching the Sixers play without Embiid, every time I turn the TV on, I'm just like, it's just not the same.
It's depressing. It is depressing.
It is. It is. It's very what could have been. And that seems even a little bit extreme to say because we did get to see it in some extent this season. And Embiid will be back. Like, there's no concerns. This is a career-ending type of situation. It's just unfortunately been a huge theme in his career thus far. And he's had an awesome career, not necessarily in the postseason, but he's had an awesome career as an individual. So I hope that these injuries can kind of correct themselves. And we're able to see him more on the court, most specifically as soon as this season, because the guy's phenomenal. So the game's missing him.
Brad, what's your biggest storyline?
My biggest storyline currently is Boston's dominance, to be honest. Everyone's right to be skeptical because how their seasons have ended and they've been so close. And should we break up, Tatum and Brown, and you get Porzingis, who can't stay available for most of his career, but great talent. Drew Holiday's getting older, and yet they've put it together. They have the best record in basketball, 5.5-game lead over the Nuggets for the best record overall right now, 9.5-game lead in the East itself. I looked up these numbers. These numbers are they're dumb. They're dumb. In their own division, they're 15-1 this year. They have the best home record in the league, 29-3. They're tied for the most road wigs in the league. Best defense, second best offense. Health is, knock on wood. And Missoula has the second best odds for coach of the year. And the fact that they have, barring injuries, have played a part in the 9.5-game lead, they've still been playing, the best basketball in the NBA. I mean, I don't know if they creep over 20 losses this year, how good they've been. So I think it's been talked about, but I think that with questions about the product that is the NBA right now, it's good to see a blue blood having some, success. Hopefully it translates to a championship, but has some success right now, and definitely a big market, large following. So that's always good for the NBA itself.
And they're 8-2 in their last 10. And I don't know about you guys, but this Boston team just looks different. And for watching them the past 6-7 years since the Tatum Brown experiment has started, you kind of knew what you were going to get. And I think with this team, it's a different level they can get to, as you mentioned, Brad, with Porzingis and Holiday. And I think just getting, I loved Marcus Smart, but getting him out of there and getting this new blood in is just, it's been reinvigorating for that franchise. And I think Joe Mazzulla has also stepped up his game of coaching. I think he took his lumps in the playoffs last year.
A lot of criticism.
Yeah. So I mean, they were my pick to win it all this year, and it's looking pretty good. So I like watching Boston. My storyline, however, is vaguely the depth in the West, but more specifically the Minnesota Timberwolves. And this is a team that people had their eyes on to start the year, but I don't think anyone saw making this leap this quickly. So they're currently sitting at third in the West. They're 45-21. What I like to look at is they're 23-8 at home and 22-13 on the road. So it shows consistency. Sometimes you'll see a team with a phenomenal home record and a disappointing road record, and it shows that they can't compete on the road, but they've been doing great. They're one game back of Denver. We all know what Denver brings to the table, likely another finals appearance for them. They're coming off an 18-point win over the Clippers, who I'm sure we'll talk about at some point tonight, but I thought that was an impressive win. You did mention earlier, David, with injuries, Karl Anthony Towns being injured. He gets reevaluated April 8th, and we'll see what happens there. But for them, they've invested in the big man. They had Karl Anthony Towns, obviously Rudy Gobert, and my guy Naz Reid. If you guys don't know about him, he's a
Brad
force
knows.
to be reckoned with.
LSU Tiger, baby. That's the LSU Tiger.
Right,
man.
here he goes.
Yeah.
I watched them against the Lakers the other night, and this dude was shooting threes like he was Steph Curry out there. I mean, I was so impressed with his game, and to be a third big man on a team, I'm like, this team invested in the right position. So you've got Anthony Edwards, you've got Rudy, Jaden McDaniels is a hound on defense, and there's not many guys that I enjoy watching play defense. I think my last favorite one was Matisse Thybulle, and just how up in you he gets, and Jaden McDaniels is on that same level with his physicality. Another guy I mentioned to my roommate the other day, I said, how many guys from Iowa have you seen in the NBA outside of Keegan Murray? And I couldn't name one. And then all of a sudden, Luka Garza comes in the game because they need another big man. And it was just fun to watch.
College.
Yeah, great college player. But the Timberwolves have just impressed, and I'm not saying they're gonna go to the finals. Western Conference Finals, I think, would be amazing for them. But with their depth and with what they've done, I think they've been the biggest storyline to me, and I'm excited to see what they can do in the playoffs. So speaking of that, I want to hear your guys' opinion on who your favorite player to watch this year has been, because there's so many good young players and good old players. But Brad, I'll start with you. Who's been your top guy to watch this year, from whether it's an athletic standpoint, scoring, defense? Who's been someone you've kept your eye on?
I mean, I know in my circles, I know I have not given necessarily this player full credit. I mean, great talent, but man, what Luka Doncic has been doing this year has been just absurd. Absolutely absurd. I mean, he's scoring at a level that over a season Kobe did, Michael did, and he's in that same breath as far as points per game. And then you're still you having to create a lot of offense. Jason Kidd said, hey, for Luka, we know you're not great defensively. Just try. And he's tried this year. And I'm not saying he's going to be a defensive stopper, but he seems bought into what is going on in Dallas and their team that is kind of trending upward. But just his play, the triple doubles. I mean, we already know his game, those deep threes, the step back, post game, like
Complaining to the refs.
Yeah, I mean that too. I mean, you got to take the good with the bad, but there's been a whole lot of good this year if you're tuning in and watching Luka Doncic. So definitely my favorite player and probably my MVP front runner personally.
34 points a game, can't deny it. David, who do you like?
Oh man, the same guy I've been rocking with from the jump. He was my preseason MVP pick. I don't know if he's gonna get it done because Jokic is insane. I mean, that guy. Another conversation for another pod. But my guy's definitely SGA. I mean, been rocking with him since Kentucky. I think the Clippers, really undersold him, and he has been an absolute phenom and a force in Oklahoma City. I mean, he's not putting up the exact same amount of stats as Luka, but 31, 5, and 6, on pretty crazy efficiency. The dude's getting to the line over 7 times a game and shooting over 90% from the line. He has been phenomenal. His and Luka's ability to both slow the game down and almost always get to their spots is really something just to marvel at. And the defensive prowess that SGA has, I believe he's still to date the league leader in steals for the season. The guy's averaging over 2 steals a game. He is a menace on both ends of the court. He is the engine for that offense and the heart of that defense. And OKC has a really fun team. But it's SGA all the way.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And he was mentioned by Andre Iguodala the other day on Ryan Russillo's pod for the guy that he would want with the ball to end the game out of any player in the NBA. And we're going to get to that question later, but he is just so fun. And to think that the Clippers shipped him off in that deal, I just think they're kicking themselves for that, for what he's turned into. I mean, I don't know who expected this.
I I did, but I'm a Kentucky guy, so I'm thinking every single one of them. I'm still over here like maybe there's hope for PJ Washington. I should let that go, but like he, in a real sense, I mean, he's so talented. And I think in a bigger way, people who didn't get to see him last year in Oklahoma City, they kind of got a preview this summer in FIBA. And I think he really surprised a lot of people with not only his leadership of that team, but just with the way he dominated a lot of those games. Like I said, on both ends of the court, he's young, he's incredibly talented. And I think the sky is the limit for him and the Thunder. So I can't wait to see what they do.
Can I say something real quick, Cal?
Yes, sir.
How different would that Clippers team be right now in LA with everything they're trending towards? Be if SGA was on that team and they never traded him. Just how different would that team be?
Categorically, I mean, because in theory, if they didn't trade him, they don't get Kawhi. Because Kawhi says, I'm only pulling up if you're, trading for PG. That was the terms of engagement. Kawhi called KD prior. KD was already like, hey, I'm making a different move. I'm not going to be able to make that happen. He called Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's like, hey, I got a situation going on right now in Philly. I'm not going to be able to make that move. So Kawhi was like, PG, you interested? PG's like, let's rock. And the rest is history, as they say. But yeah, to imagine what the Clippers could look like right now with SGA is very interesting.
I had a kid in my class, one of my first years of teaching, who had a Clippers SGA jersey, and Gilgeous-Alexander barely fit on the back of that. It had to like wrap around the entire jersey with that number 2. And I remember telling him, I'm like, dude, you're onto it. Like, if you got his rookie jersey, like, this guy's going to be special. So David, similar to that stat line with SGA, my guy, Anthony Edwards, averaging 26 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He's an absolute menace out there. What really jumps out to me about Anthony Edwards is he's 22 years old. He was the number 1 pick in the 2020 draft, which, coming out of Georgia, there haven't been many guys coming out of Georgia in recent memory.
Honestly, since Dominique.
Yeah, it was a COVID year. It was an odd draft. It wasn't in the summertime. It was in the fall. I remember because LaMelo Ball was in that draft. And I mean, he was the number 1 pick, but I think there was a lot of skepticism about it, and he has turned into a monster. So, like I mentioned, 26 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. To me, the comparison is similar to D Wade. and they're similar in their size and strength, and their ability to shoot might not be the best 3-point shooters, but their tenacity and aggressiveness towards the rim is really fun to watch. I texted both of you guys the other night when they played the Lakers. He almost ended Anthony Davis's life with that dunk attempt. He cocked it back like I haven't seen someone cock it back since Vince Carter. And unfortunately, he missed the dunk, but it was one of the best missed dunks you'll ever see. There's also contact, not called, whatever. But I just love his game. And the fact that he does it with a smile and his charisma. And I just think he's a cool dude, man. He's from Atlanta. I watched his interview with Funny Marco on Open Thoughts. He's sitting there just eating chicken wings, telling about life in Atlanta. He just seems like a dude that I'd want to go hang out with. And Anthony Edwards has been, for me, the most fun to watch, and just an exciting young talent that is going to continue on with USA basketball. And I just think he's one of the next faces of the NBA for sure.
I mean, I think he's probably one of his athleticism and how he's great at everything he does athletically. I haven't seen someone like that, honestly, since like Randy Moss. Like how great Randy Moss was in so many sports. Like that raw athleticism, speed, everything you want in an athlete, Anthony Edwards has, and he's a dog. So, man, that's an excellent pick in my book, man. He's scary. He's scary.
Yeah. Speaking of Randy Moss, I met a guy the other day from West Virginia, and I don't think I've ever met someone from West Virginia. And I go, hey, who's the best hoopers to come out of West Virginia? He goes, I got two guys for you, White Chocolate and Randy Moss. And I go, Randy Moss? He goes, yeah, he was a dog in high school basketball.
It's no lie.
Wasn't he All-American too?
I believe he was. Well, I know for sure he was All-State in not only football and basketball, but also track and field. Randy Moss is, a one-on-one type of athlete. If you have an opportunity to watch any kind of documentaries on that guy, you should. Off his personality alone, he'll keep you entertained. But I mean, that guy as an athlete, insane. Yeah, insane.
Yeah, I got some different pod, but I got some Randy Moss stories as a kid. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. I got some Randy Moss stories, man. Heartbreak, but dog.
Real quickly, for those that weren't super invested in the NBA and didn't hear much about the in-season tournament, I want you guys to just touch on real quickly what that was like, the in-season tournament, how it shook out. Obviously, the Lakers beat the Pacers for the championship, but how do you guys think David, I'll start with you, the in-season tournament went, and kind of what were your thoughts on the outcome?
It was interesting. The courts were interesting during. So, I mean, like high level, there's two stages. You have like your group play and then you have your knockout play. During these stages, they kind of work them into the schedule of the NBA season already. So when there was an in-season tournament game, they were the games that had like the crazy, kooky, funky courts. Some of them were interesting. Most of them were horrible eyesores that I hope that we never have to experience again.
The red courts were terrible. I hated them. I don't know about you.
I think the red courts honestly were worse than the neon green ones, because at least the neon green ones I could try to appreciate like the vigor, of the moment, but like that, the red was just I could not do that. Anyways, ultimately, I think
just want to say I've never watched the NBA game and needed Visine watching the game.
That's what I mean. It was like I'm wearing sunglasses watching the game.
It was like you're watching an Oregon game. I mean, like there's paint splattered on the court. Peyton Pritchard was a dog on that court. That's the only thing I'll ever remember. But
he definitely was. Oregon's got a great court. But I think the in-season tournament in large part was a success. People tuned in to watch the games. They followed the storyline. It seemed like the tournament championship in Vegas had a good turnout. And for the NBA, that's really trying to monetize a lot of these games, with sports betting now. They're really trying to lean into that. It kind of couldn't have gone better in a sense. They're hosting the game in the mecca of sports betting in America. And they're kind of like just promoting the hell out of the games even more because it has this little like side story attached to it. So I would say in large part, it was successful. I do hope that they kind of tweak some of the games because what you kind of saw was tension when a team is up 10 points, but they need to win by 12 in order to qualify for the tiebreaker. So then a guy wants to score the basket with less than 15 seconds. And some guys, for some reason, are still taking exception to the fact that somebody's scoring on them even when the game's already over. Like, you lost, let it go. Where was this attitude and effort when the game wasn't over? I never know. But they kind of need to figure that out, because it did create some bad blood, and those situations are going to occur regardless, but you don't want to inflame them with the level of competition and also the financial incentive that was attached to the IST. So,
and Brad, you were over at my house for the night of the championship game. I remember I had some people over, and it was fun to watch. I enjoyed it. What were your thoughts on just overall how it went this season?
Definitely a fun night, fun game. It was great to see the end product that was in Vegas that David mentioned, and obviously it's garnered a lot of financial success, and that part I hope they kind of keep in Vegas. Even if they do get an NBA team in Vegas, keep that in Vegas. I kind of like the fanfare and the marketing and basically the ramp up in the advertisement, the ramp up of launching it. In my opinion, I thought it was a decent campaign, and it had a great turnout attached to it. Now, as far as the games itself, as a person who had a team that made it to Vegas, I mean, they think that's all they did was make it to Vegas. So I don't want to even get into the game. But I think that the great thing about it was it created storylines, and you saw the potential of, okay, this Pacers team. We know, I mean, the funny headline of obviously LeBron going for that championship to try to like get another one. Like, I like some of those extra storylines off of it. I see what they're doing as far as like similar to how they do over in Europe, the random cup plays in the middle of the season, which as a soccer fan, I do enjoy, because those cups do mean something to them, especially with the incentives. So I like some of like the skeleton of what was this year. There's always can be improvements, the courts for sure. But just, I think as more people understand the games itself and the scheduling and like learn the format, I think more fans will buy into it. And I think it could get even bigger. So I enjoyed it. And I think it was a great product that the NBA put out for the fans.
Yeah. And I just think it was in a great point in the season to where most people don't start typically watching NBA until Christmas Day. So to get that done around December 12th, around that area, I think was a good way to, as you said, incentivize it for the players and to just get some more hype around the NBA when most Americans are more tuned into football during that time. So speaking of the Lakers, I wanted to talk about biggest disappointments of the year. And David, you mentioned this in our previous podcast, one game into the season. You said, hey, this Lakers team, coming off of Western Conference Finals, got a lot coming back. Like, be aware that they might not be who you thought they were. And for me, I'll start with saying the Lakers have been my biggest disappointment of the year. They're currently 9th in the West at 36-31 with a 12-20 road record. As I mentioned earlier, you never want to see a road record like that. It shows inconsistency. They lost to the Kings last night. David, I got to ask, is D-Lo still deloading?
I mean, he definitely had a software update and popped off for 40 points the other night. So he has the tools at his disposal. But yeah, I mean, you saw the report. I don't know if you saw the report the other day, but he basically came out and said that a lot of the strife he has experienced is because of a lack of, opportunity to engage the coach and a lot of dialogue regarding, what's kind of going on the court. And previously that was because of the personnel that they had and where he sat in the food chain. So, I mean, I think D'Angelo Russell's a talented player. I think, unfortunately, if you're a point guard playing next to LeBron James, you need to be a great catch and shoot player. And if you're not a great catch and shoot player, your skill set is going to have to change. And if you are not a malleable NBA player, you're going to unfortunately take some of the strays when the team doesn't win because, nobody could ever speak ill about the throne. God forbid. And, I won't do it on this podcast, but like I told you, the Lakers have clear, glaring roster concerns. I was concerned about health as always, as everybody kind of is. Anthony Davis has missed 3 games.
Yep.
3 games. He has not been the problem. Okay. And LeBron James has not been the problem, even though LeBron has missed, some games as well because he's had some nicks, some bruises, etc. But yeah, Cal. I mean, I think the Lakers are a good pick. They are sitting at 9th right now. They are well within play-in territory. So the nice thing for them is the top of the West right now. It could shake out in their favor. If it shakes out with the 1 seed being the Thunder, the 1 seed being the T-Wolves, hey,
Yep.
well,
That's a
they haven't
favorable
lost to the
matchup for
T-Wolves
LA.
yet. That's right. And LeBron's familiar with the Thunder, and they're smaller, so AD would definitely give them hell in the low post. That would be an interesting series. But what they do not want is to see the Joker in the first round. You do not want to crawl out of the in-season tournament to get swept.
Yeah. And when I watched the Lakers play against the T-Wolves the other night on TV, one guy I saw on the bench that I kind of forgot about was Gabe Vincent. And I liked him a lot with Miami. He fit what Miami did.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a good role player, but even with him being injured, he's not gonna to move that team where they need to go. He can help, but I mean, you can't blame anything on a small injury like that. The other thing I noticed, I don't know, I like to make comparisons, and with the Lakers getting Spencer Dinwiddie, I don't know about you guys, but he shows me flashes of J.R. Smith. I don't know if it's the way they shoot the ball or their kind of gunslinger mentality, but I do like the pickup of Spencer Dinwiddie to the Lakers just because I always loved watching J.R. Smith play with LeBron, and they're a similar type of player. So I'm not ruling the Lakers out. And as you said, David, if they could match up first round against either the Thunder or the T-Wolves, I think it'd be favorable for them. But no one wants to run into Denver. So, Brad, I'll go to you next. Who's been your biggest disappointment?
Mine is, I mean, they're a playing team, and they're in the West, and the West is stacked as always. It's competitive, not stacked. We'll say competitive. But it is not more so their play; it's more so what it used to be. And my biggest disappointment has got to be the Golden State Warriors right now. It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad to see them now. I mean, they could make things interesting, but like with the roster they have, I mean, you have Curry talking life after basketball. Clay's relegated to the bench. Draymond. I mean, I don't even want to get you too much into his headline from earlier in the year at this point, but
which one?
There are multiple ones, but it's kind of sad to see this team go out like this. Bright spot Kuminga, they got some decent young players, but they're closer to
Podziemski. If I was in the NBA, that's who I'd be.
I think that every time I watch him play, I'm like, is that
is
the hair?
That was perfect. That was perfect. Wow.
We've already seen we've seen doppelganger Clay, so you might need to pull up on a game in a jersey. You might get on the court. So
I would pay you to do that. I would pay you to Cal. Oh my God, I would love that. But yeah. So they still got some nice young talent, but they're closer to push the damn button in rush hour 2 than they are a championship. They're getting close to that time that we might have to break. It might be a last dance, and I'm not saying this year is that, but just the lack of availability from those players, the role change, the clear age, and Steph is still Steph. Clay has sparks, but you can tell that they are closer to sunset than dawn, and that's the thing that is the biggest disappointment. Is just how they are going out right now.
Hey, Vince Carter said it best. It's over. It's over.
It's close. It's close. It's definitely about to hit midnight on that organization.
Yeah, clearly there's something going on over there. That's why that leak came out about them making a play for LeBron. I would anticipate that they revisit that conversation. Yeah, clearly Golden State they have struggled to transition from their light years ahead approach that got them their initial championships into this next phase of the franchise's future. And they've got some talented players, like you said, Pajemski, Kuminga. I'm glad they're playing him. Moody, I think, is talented. Lester, he is interesting. He's still a little raw, but I think he's interesting. He has a nice skill set. So we'll see what happens. Clay, like to your point, Brad, he's entered Manu Ginobili territory, but he is not hooping like Manu Ginobili. That could change. But I think the uncertainty of his contract situation is weighing heavily on a guy who usually plays a lot more freely by this point in the NBA season. So we'll see what happens.
David, who's making you scratch your head?
Well, I went to a game in person, so it was even more head scratching. I guess so it's twofold. I have a team in both sides of the conference. They played each other. On the western side of the conference, I'll make it short, simple, and sweet. What's going on with the Kings? Okay, are they the Kings or are they the peasants? Because last year they were on this phenomenal run. They were, the Cinderella story of the league. Oh, look at the Kings. Oh, like the beam. Well, apparently the beam done ran out of gas, okay, because they keep losing games. Sabonis, granted, people talk about how overrated he is. I think he has ended up being vastly underrated in a lot of ways because the dude is talented, and he's at like 45 plus double doubles in a row. I mean, you really gotta show respect. De'Aaron Fox has got a crazy motor. Keegan Murray has started to step more comfortably into a solidified starter role, and I really like what we've seen from him. But what's going on with the Kings? Like they got to figure that out. They're pushing up against playing territory.
Mm-hmm.
No disrespect to Brad's Pelicans, but the Pelicans are sitting ahead of the Kings right now. Like what's going on? And on the other side of the aisle, hey, look, everybody gonna get it straight today. Okay, that's what it is. Cal got his stray because he's a Kings guy. You got your stray because you're a Pelicans guy. Okay, so my stray is the Suns right now who are getting whooped by the Celtics on national TV. So we're all losing. There's no winners tonight. On the other side of the aisle, in the Eastern Conference, my biggest head scratcher and disappointment was a team I saw play the Kings in person, and that's the Pistons. Okay, and I will continue to call them the Pistons because this is a family podcast, but I want to call them something else. It has been head scratching, eye gouging, absolutely maddening. They have too much talent on that team to be this bad. Monty Williams, what is going on? I'm glad they won 12 games. I was really worried they weren't even going to hit double digits. And it's crazy seeing a guy like Jalen Duren in person next to a Sabonis. Sabonis is at 45 double doubles in a row. Jalen Duren seems like he should only have double doubles. That dude, it's crazy. He is not even old enough to drink. Okay, because that dude is scary. Cade Cunningham is incredible. They have athletes all across the board, and they just lose. I don't know what's going on in Detroit. There must be something in the water. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. But they got to figure it out. It's bad. It's bad.
If we're going to talk about strays, there's two people joining me right now that both said, look out for Detroit this year. And that backfired completely.
I said it
backfired like an old busted Ford. Okay.
I came to pay my dues. And the crazy thing is, the Wizards are worse.
Oh.
That's the crazy thing. The Wizards are worse.
No one will remember that because of the Pistons losing streak.
That's true.
True. That's very true. But they were flirting with a streak recently. They were flirting with it. It wasn't a full-on courtship of that long, historic losing streak, but it was trying to flirt. It was trying to holler at it. So, but nah. I was hoping we were going to skate by and not mention the Pistons.
I had to. The people of America deserve us to hold ourselves accountable.
Fair.
That's what we're going to do.
Fair.
That's what we're going to do. I was wrong.
And Jalen Duren went 20-20 the other night in a game. And like, you look at, as you said, David, the athletes they have and the talent, and with Monty Williams getting the contract he did, it's like, what is going on? So hopefully they turn it around. I'm hoping that it improves over the years, but this year has been one for the ages. So from biggest disappointment, I would like to now give you guys an opportunity for a hot take and tell me a prediction that might be a little out there, a little out of the water. What do you think is a prediction that you see coming, whether it's playoffs or to end the regular season, David, that people might not expect? What do you predict will happen from this point forward?
Well, since I've already burned myself preseason with the Pistons, I have nothing to lose with this prediction. But my prediction is that the Oklahoma City Thunder leapfrog the Denver Nuggets and that SGA ends up with the MVP honor this year, not Nikola Jokic. I think that they have a great schedule to close out the season. I think that OKC, obviously, as a unit, is just younger, so I have a little bit more confidence in them sprinting across the finish line as opposed to the Nuggets, who I think could try to coast when they feel comfortable, because realistically, one or two, they wouldn't really have too much to worry about there. But yeah, like I said, SGA is my guy. SGA has been HIM this season, and I'm hoping that SGA equals MVP. So that's my pick.
Okay. Brad, what about you?
My bold prediction: the Bucks will be in the Eastern Conference Finals, and the only reason why I'm saying that's bold is because of who's at the helm now and Doc Rivers. That's bold. The headlines early. There was a lot of people in our group chat.
Are you sure you want to do this?
I mean, if we shooting shots, we gonna unload. But
Right.
Unload the clip.
But there was a lot of people who, because of past narrative, were casting stones at Doc Rivers and his Bucks team as soon as he got to the helm. And I just think that people forget that adjustments in life need to occur, and it's not always pretty. Like, did you just forget that? Well, apparently they did, and the sky was falling in Milwaukee. And look at them now. They have won 7 of the last 10. They are tied for second and probably going to take second at some point. Now, Donovan Mitchell coming back for the Cavaliers will make it interesting as we finish the stretch, but Mobley continually unavailable. Jared Allen playing well, but what Dame, Giannis, and his team has been doing recently, especially since the All-Star break, they, as great as the Celtics have looked this entire year, the Bucks are slowly rounding into form where they can challenge the Celtics. I think the Celtics will. We can review the tape. My prediction from earlier this year. I think that the Bucks are priming themselves to make it interesting if they can get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and I think they can.
Why is that a bold prediction, though? Wouldn't you say most people thought they'd get there?
Bold because of the headlines that have occurred, the roller coaster ride that was the season, putting a staff together preseason. All of a sudden, Terry Stott, right?
Mm-hmm.
Former Blazers head coach, on staff with Adrian Griffin, a week into training camp, leaves the team. And then a lot of questions about Adrian Griffin as they've gone through the year. And then you look at the Bucks, who you switch out Drew Holiday for Dame. There's going to be adjustment defensively. Dame is not a defensive player, but questions about their defense. Is it going to fit? There was just a lot of question marks, rightfully so, that were thrown out that put people's doubt in the Milwaukee Bucks for them to put stock in the 76ers when Embiid was healthy. Put stock into the Knicks. I don't know why you do that. The Pacers were a little bit higher in the standings, but a lot of people were looking at that. The Heat obviously always finds a way to make a run in the playoffs, whether they should or not. There's so many people that you are seeing getting off the bandwagon. And I just think people may get back on. And that's why I say it's that type of headline, in my opinion.
I feel that. So my prediction, I don't know why I've always had a soft spot in my heart for this team, but the Dallas Mavericks, I think they make some noise in the Western Conference playoffs this year. If I have to make a hot take, the glasses come down. So hear me out. Luka's in his 6th season in the NBA. He's averaging 34 points a game, as we established earlier. And I kind of see his career going in LeBron's path. He might not get that many titles, but in terms of the superstardom, think about LeBron in year 6, which would have been 2009, probably at one of the heights of his athletic career and prowess. And I think Luka is that good that even though there's not a lot of great role players around him, with him and Kyrie he's kind of, been quiet. We haven't heard a lot from him in the news, which is great because, that whole Brooklyn experiment was pretty crazy. But I think Kyrie's found a good place in Dallas. I think Luka's ready to make that step. Although Luka's been to the Western Conference Finals when they destroyed the Suns in that Game 7, which I'll never forget, David. I just think Luka and Kyrie can quietly make some noise in the West this year. So that's my hot take. We'll see if it comes true. If you guys have any backlash to that, let me know. But I think Luka being in year 6, I think he can get where he needs to be.
Luka been balling, but I'll tell you what's not hot. Their defense. Their defense is still not hot. I like Lively. I think he is going to be a good pro, but still a rookie. So it's hot. It's hot. It definitely is hot. And Luka has been balling this year, but I'll believe it when I see it. Just like with my pals, I'll believe it when I see it as far as health with them. So, but it's not a hot take for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I echo Brad's sentiment. They got to figure it out on defense. Gafford has been a nice addition. He had 7 blocks last night, so the dude can definitely swat him. But they got to figure out the perimeter defense. And I mean, Luka and Kyrie.
It's a turnstile. It's a turnstile, man.
Players, yes, 1,000%. But
yeah,
Luka.
Traffic cones.
Luka's the real deal. Luka's the real deal. So we'll see if they're able to stay in a playoff spot. Because if they fall into the play-in, I don't think they're going to like who they're going to have to play. So we'll see.
Yeah. And we've spent a lot of time talking about the Western Conference, obviously, because it's deeper this year. But I got a little grab bag set of questions for both of you. And take as much time as you want for any of them. But David, I'll start with you. Cavs or Knicks make it further in the playoffs this year? Because we know last year they matched up in the playoffs. I thought the Cavs had the more talented team. The Knicks took it to them. But this year it might be a little bit of a different story as far as, their records go. So who do you think goes further, Cavs or Knicks this year's playoffs?
That is a great question. That's a great question, Cal. Personally, if I'm going off of it right now, I would say the Knicks, because the Knicks would probably draw the Magic in the first round, and I have less confidence in the Magic beating the Knicks than I have in the Cavs beating potentially, like, let's say, the Heat,
the Pacers.
Yeah. So I would lead Knicks. Also, like, the Cavs have been an awesome storyline this season. I really like Donovan Mitchell. As I said earlier, Jared Allen has been going crazy. Mobley just got hurt, so that's unfortunate. But I just in a 4-game playoff series, I just think it's different. You remember last year, Jared Allen literally caught vertigo because the lights were too bright in MSG. Like, I hope that he has moved on from that. I can't speak to that. I'm not his optometrist. So I don't know. I think the Cavs just kind of still need to figure some stuff out. And I think Tibbs is more of a playoff proven coach at this point. Brad, what do you think?
I'm going the Cavs go further. And the reason why I say that is it's a big if, but depending on if Embiid can come back and get some games under his belt prior to the start of the playoffs, who's not to say that this Philadelphia 76ers team, once Embiid comes back, takes 5, and you have a first round matchup against you have the Knicks going against the 76ers in the first round instead of the Magic. I think if that is the draw that happens, then I would put my money on the Cavaliers having a little bit of an easier matchup than the Knicks would. Yeah, but for me, it all depends on if the Knicks can hold where they are, who is their matchup in the first round. And I think that even though they are a really good defensive team, as always, under Coach Tibb, that you have to be able to, and they've had some injuries, score. You still have to be able to score, especially in a 7-game series. You got to be able to score the basketballs. And Cleveland can score. I mean, and it can't all be on Brunson if you're the Knicks. So that's why if I am a betting man, which I'm not, I would put my money on the Cavaliers based on just foreseeing Philadelphia climbing and potentially taking on the Knicks in the first round.
Yeah, and I think, as we mentioned, it's all dependent on matchups. I mean, there's so much up in the air for how these playoff and play-in teams, because everyone would love to see Orlando in the first round or see the Pacers or see a Embiidless Sixers. But, I mean, I don't know what's different about Cleveland. I know they picked up Max Strus, and he's a good three-point shooter. But with that collapse they had in the playoffs last year, I can't get that out of my head. And as we start to do more of these podcasts, like we all have our tendencies, and one of mine is to be the college guy or to bring up college things. And there's no denying the fact that all those Villanova guys there together is important for the Knicks. And they all played together in college with DiVincenzo, and Josh Hart. Yeah. And so Jalen Brunson, I love that just because I'm a big college guy as well. And I don't know if like the average eye sees that, but that chemistry is really important. So it'll all depend on the matchup. So my next question, because we haven't talked about these two guys much, would be Victor Wembanyama, Chet Holmgren. Who do you think takes Rookie of the Year, and why? Because both have had great seasons, but when you look at the Western Conference standings, we've got the Thunder in second and the Spurs in last. But when you talk or when you listen to podcasters and people who have a vote, they say that Rookie of the Year, it doesn't depend so much on the team's record like MVP does. Mm-hmm. Whereas, you don't need to really take the team's record into consideration. So, David, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that narrative is true. Typically, historically, for Rookie of the Year, your team's winning percentage is not as big of a factor as it is for other notable season awards like MIP, MVP, et cetera, et cetera. With that being said, my pick, which I know is not going to be the right one, is Chet Holmgren because of his immediate impact on the team. The Thunder were a fun story last year, and this year they are a problem. That is because of a multitude of factors, but most significantly, it is because of SGA's ascension and because of Chet Holmgren's arrival. He had an ankle injury early last preseason and missed all of last season, so we didn't get to see him. Historically, redshirt rookies win Rookie of the Year. But historically, redshirts have not had to compete against the 7-foot French alien that is Victor Wembanyama. He is going to win Rookie of the Year off of narrative and precedent alone. When that guy plays and plays well, he is insane. I can remember playing 2K back in the day, and I used to stretch my guys as much as I could, but keep them in a certain skill set. And I give them a Ray Allen jump shot, and, Allen Iverson handling. And Wembanyama he really is like, he is a video game player. So he is going to win Rookie of the Year. He is hopefully going to have a great NBA career. And if you haven't watched him in a game yet, please find an opportunity too before the season closes out, because just seeing that guy on TV, you're going to know immediately who we're talking about. He's insane. And
speaking of video games, he's looking like Stretch from Street Volume 2. That man can block everything.
Everybody. The block is hot. He's keeping it hot. Seriously.
Brad, what about you?
Since y'all bringing up NBA Street, I just want to say elbow room.
He's selling wolf tickets. Uh-oh. He said elbow room. Apparently elbow room, man. He's leaving.
All right, David. It's me and you until he gets back in here. So I agree with you in terms of Wembanyama is going to get it, but look what Chet has done with the Thunder to take them to that 2 seed. It's just like, and it's so fun to watch the Thunder do their post-game interviews. Like they're so fun to be around, and they're all joking, and they're all like, it's just a cool thing. Like they're gonna look back on this season, and this is like where it all started for them. So
Yeah, absolutely.
my next question, I know you mentioned SGA a lot, so could be a potential answer to this question, but what player would you want with the ball to end the game if you had to pick one?
The guy I'm watching. The guy I'm watching right now, I mean, as long as he's playing, it's going to be my answer. That is Kevin Durant. He, to me, is the definition of a bucket getter. This guy is a 3-level scorer. There's not a bad shot he has ever seen on the court. I don't think he will ever find one. And at the end of the day, I want the ball in the hands of a guy who can shoot over a center because he can look a center right in his eyes. You know, KD to me is the best scorer in the NBA, period. And it's not to say he scores more points than anybody. As we said, Luka is running away with that. It's not to say that he can score more than anybody. I think, you know, Steph Curry would probably get the job done if he really wanted to, because that guy's range is unlimited. But just the ease that Kevin Durant can always get to his shot is why I would want the ball in his hands. And that's probably why, if you did a poll in the NBA, I would assume most players would say that's the guy they don't want to have the ball. I would say probably him and Curry.
Yeah. And surprising that we've gone this long and haven't mentioned this guy as much. And to me, I have to tweak the question to who do I want with the ball in their hands, which would be Jokic, because he's going to make the right play. He might not get the bucket, but that man can see the floor with the best of them. And it's crazy how good he is and how little people talk about him, and just how I think his personality rubs off on the fact that he's not, he's never in the news for what he says. He keeps a low profile. He goes home to Europe every summer and does that horse racing stuff. And it was hilarious. I don't know if you saw the videos, but he brought Aaron Gordon with him this summer, and they were doing all the stuff together. And I would love to listen to an interview or a podcast with Aaron Gordon to see what that experience was like for him in a different part of the world. But for me, it's got to be Jokic, and to watch him play so unselfishly is just really refreshing, because I don't know, you and I grew up playing basketball, and even when we play now in like this part of our life, like we pass the ball and we cut immediately, and we play like the way we were taught. And in the NBA, we're very ISO dominant and one-on-one, and everyone has a trainer who is teaching them these ISO skills. And to watch Jokic play and be so unselfish and pass the ball is just, it's awesome to see. And it's unlike a Jason Tatum or a KD, who are just can go out and get a bucket whenever they want, however they want. So for me, it's Jokic. Brad, welcome back. We're just talking about who we want with the ball in their hands to end a game. David said KD. I said Jokic. Who would you say is your pick for who do you want the ball in their hands to end a game, late clock, pressure's on?
You gotta go Dame. You gotta go Dame. And the only other person that I thought of, even though he's not on a winning team right now, I was gonna say DeMar DeRozan. I was gonna say DeMar. But for the sake of this conversation, and everyone loves a winner here in America, I'm gonna go Damian Lillard. I mean, just time and time again, his moments, his ability to shoot beyond the 3-point line, which means that if you're a defender, you got to start. Honestly, before he crosses half court, you got to guard Damian Lillard. You have to. You have to. His range requires your attention for extended periods of time, longer than anybody else on the team, And that impact, coupled with the moments and just his sure will, and it's just a culmination of all the work that he's put into himself, shows up in those moments, which is why a lot of people are very endearing of Damian Lillard and want to see him succeed. But as far as in clutch situations, I mean, time and time again, he's been a killer. I mean, he probably killed OKC's run, which caused a lot of things to shape how the league has become since then, i.e., KD leaving to go to Golden State. But with that, as I digress, Damian Lillard at the end of the game, you gotta give him the ball.
Mm-hmm. I like that. So as we wrap up here, I always like to end with one thing on your mind. Does not have to be NBA or sports related, but I wanted to start by giving a little shout out to the Lincoln High School Lady Railers basketball team. This was a town I used to teach in Illinois a few years ago. They went a perfect 38-0 this season, won the state championship, and it was unbelievable to see the camaraderie that this town I lived in brought to this girls team. So as the previous year, they went 36-1, and their only loss was in the state championship game. And then coming back, they brought back 5 seniors who all started, one of which I had in class, and they just rolled through teams. And they were a 3A team, and Illinois class has 4, so 4 would be the top. And they were playing number 1, 2, 3 ranked teams in 4A and beating them handily. And to see that community rally around that team, they've got a girl who will most likely win Miss Basketball for the state of Illinois. It was just awesome to see. And just to have the connection, what I've learned is that as life goes on, the more connections you have with people that you've met or you've taught or you've coached, it's just really cool to see a team and a community rally behind them. So shout out to the Lady Railers, perfect season, 38-0, set school history, and it was their first team title in school history. So shout out. David, what's on your mind? What's new in life, or what's something that you could share with the audience since it's been a minute?
Man, well, definitely shout out to like you said, that basketball team. That's awesome. Man, I don't got a whole lot, I guess. I'm trying not to go too far off the deep end, but I'm definitely a political guy, so I've been following a lot of like news stories, emerging news stories. The situation with the Boeing whistleblower is really unfortunate. I'm waiting to see what kind of developments occur with that story. And for those of you who haven't heard about that, there was a whistleblower who was giving key testimony in the ongoing investigation into Boeing, whether or not they are intentionally putting faulty parts on their planes. And during the middle of this deposition, this dude doesn't show up to court the next day and self-inflicted gunshot wound. We will see what happens. It's a really dark day for democracy if that's kind of what we're looking at in America. Obviously, you got the whole TikTok ban going on. I am not on TikTok. I'm not going to bash TikTok. I think it's kind of scary that the U.S. government is attempting to regulate free speech, because in a lot of ways, that's what this is. Don't be confused by a lot of the other narratives. That's really what it comes down to is, can Uncle Sam profit off of TikTok? And right now he can't. So Uncle Sam ain't going for that. So we will see what comes of that. And really in the deep end, I am a UFO guy. I totally am. And
I heard when you were in Tampa, we had a long talk.
I am, it. And the Pentagon released a report last Friday that was just an absolute joke. I mean, to think that the Pentagon in less than 6 months could compile a complete and accurate history of the U.S. government's interest in UFOs, whatever, UAPs, whatever you want to clarify the phenomena as. To think that the Pentagon could compile a report of over 50 years in less than 6 months when they haven't passed an audit, a yearly audit in the last 5 years, it's laughable. So we will see what comes of it. To me, it's been a fringe topic and it's becoming more mainstream by the day. I think that's interesting. So we'll see where it lands. But those are the new things with me. I'm continuing to follow those stories. They're very interesting, and I will always be a basketball guy. So we're pushing up against the playoffs. It's when the games matter.
All right, Brad, follow up that UFO talk, man.
I didn't know we were getting this deep. I didn't know how. I didn't know we were going deep into the bag, but
so where the fries be at the bottom of the bag.
Okay, I see. I mean, fair, but I know obviously we talking sports and tied to sports loosely, but biggest thing on my mind is the NAACP recently cautioning African American athletes to reconsider going to state universities here in the state of Florida, whether it's the University of Miami, whether it's Florida State, other state schools, because of the stripping of diversity and inclusion positions and roles at universities, which has become a polarizing topic for the absolute wrong agendas and the wrong reasons that is too deep to go at the end of this podcast. But certainly sends a clear message as to the value of all the citizens here in Florida and those who want to attend the universities and institutions down here, how they value people who may look like me and others. Not to get too deep in the bag, I'm touching fries right now, but that's something to tell people to potentially boycott these schools who are big brand names in college athletics. If something was to come of this and it starts hurting pocketbooks instead of political races, we'll see how long this lasts if people do speak out and stand against this. With NIL, a bag is a bag, which will counteract that, but something definitely interesting amongst other things that go on here in the state of Florida right now. That's on my mind.
And I'm repping Dr. King today with my shirt. So if anyone is interested, we got NBA heads listening, but with everything we're talking about, with one thing on your mind, leave us a comment or a message about, any ideas for other topics outside of the sports world that we could hit on. Cause I'm sure we could do that easily as well.
If you
also
want a UFO podcast, you just gotta ask. I have the data, so let Cal know.
I will not be a part of that podcast. I will not be. If it's affecting me, y'all let me know. But I ain't gonna be on that podcast.
Yeah. Also, have you guys seen the movie Oppenheimer?
I have.
Okay, I watched it last night for the first time. Quick thoughts. I need to watch it again to fully grasp everything, but I was a big fan. David?
I mean, can Christopher Nolan make a bad movie? I haven't seen it yet. If he has, please send it my way. It was great. The acting was great. Cinematography was great. I have no notes. I'm so glad Robert Downey Jr. got an award. Shout out to Cillian Murphy for his award as well, too. I don't participate in watching the Oscars, but I'm glad both of those guys got recognition because they really did a great job.
Shout out to Josh Peck. He had about 2 words in that movie, but I was like, hey, I know that guy.
True. Forgot all about that. Yeah, random shout out. I don't know how that happened, but synchronicities are interesting, right?
Brad?
I am ashamed to say I have still not seen Oppenheimer. It is on the list. It will happen fairly soon now that I've been outed. Thanks again for another straight. I'm just kidding. But heard nothing but great things. It's a movie that I had mixed thoughts when it was coming out, but obviously Christopher Nolan can do very little wrong. The perception and the awards that movie has garnered. I mean, it's definitely on the list to watch. And I mean, since we're being honest, I saw the Barbie movie before I saw Oppenheimer. I'm insane. I did.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap things up today. Thank you for everyone who's listening, and we'll see you next time on Kicking It with Cal.